When you're ready, I'm ready.
Okay, so can I start the official proceedings? So, good afternoon to everybody and welcome to our now second SMME webinar session. I hope that's correct. It's good to have you all here. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce Kamogelo Mompani, who is one of the SAPICS directors. We do have another on the line, but Kamogelo is going to do the official welcome and opening for us today. We really appreciate your time to be with us, Kamogelo, to say a few words. So with that being said, I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you.
You can't get away that easy, Tonya. Please introduce another board member as well who's online, so that at least the colleagues can know about her as well. Okay,
sorry. So Shanti Wilson is also online. Shanti is a SAPICS board member. She also heads up the SMME committee. She is the chair of that committee. She's also with us this afternoon. And I don't think there are other board members on the call. If you are, please jump up and say hi, but otherwise those are our two board members for today. So as you can see, Kamogelo is dressed for the occasion with his suit and all. He takes these things very seriously. So Kamogelo, please introduce yourself there and say hi to everybody.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm quite excited to be here, privileged to be here. Surrounded by gray hair, the wisdom and everything else that comes with it. So I'm hoping that Ken please share some wisdom, and that's why we are here today. That Tedmas is going to share a bit of wisdom with all of us today. And many of you might know him as well, and you might have worked with him. You might have came out of his hands to where you are today. So we are really privileged to be joined by yourself, and that again, a real seasoned supply chain expert. Obviously, many of you know that Ken runs his own business, which is Kent Outsourcing Services. And he's been consulting, I don't know, for more than 200 companies, providing their employees with education, courses in operation and supply chain management. And I mean, that's why I said perhaps, many of you will have come through his hands as well. And obviously, one of the people that have been with SAPICS more than me, of course, over 30 years, running the Cape Town chapter as well, and we are really privileged to have you today. You've been a board of directors, so you know what it takes, and you've also held a position as a president, not just once, twice, for that matter. So it is indeed a privilege, and obviously all the designations that you've acquired over the years, the CPIM, CSP, CLTD as an instructor of all of these programs as well. You are also an instructor of DDI, DDP, DDL courses as well. And it is indeed, even the simulation software from InChange. So this experience, I'm not going to finish reading, Tonya, the experience that Titmas has. And that's why, I'm quite excited that he can share some of that knowledge and experience with us today. So today, obviously, Ken, you've presented quite a lot of papers and workshops in South Africa, but not just here, globally as well, overseas in many supply chain conferences. So it is indeed an honor to see how SMMEs today can be privileged to access the value chain, the supply chains, not just of government, of private sector, but how they can also, benefit by improving their own efficiencies and being effective as well. in the businesses that they run. So we are really privileged to have you. And I'll hand over then to Ntate K. And in sign language, this is what we say. So if you, that's how we clap in sign language. So thank you and welcome. I thought I'll give you those two sign language, everyone that is attending today. Those are the most two important signs you need to know. It's thank you. Yeah, I know you know that. And then you are welcome as well, right? Bringing the two hands to you. So welcome, Mr. Titmus.
Thank you, Kamakela. What are we going to be doing today? We're going to be talking about supply chain and materials management. This is part of the SMME program that SAPICS is putting together. The whole idea is that we want to educate SMMEs. We want corporates that have got SMMEs to join the program. And if you are out there and you are an SMME, this is an opportunity to learn a few things. What I'm going to be going through today is what is available on an online course that we have available. It's called Supply Chain and Materials Management. And I'd like to thank BISCO and Supply Chain Smart. They are the company that have organized this online platform. So it makes it easy for anybody and everybody, doesn't matter where they are in Africa or even in the world, they can access this material. So what I'm going to be doing is just giving you a bit of an overview of what this particular course includes. And if you were on the webinar last month, we went through the warehousing module of these particular courses. And next month, we're going to be going through inventory replenishment, which we'll talk about later. I don't really need to put up the next slide, I don't think, because Kamakela has really gone through it. But the important, whoops, gone too far. Let me go back again. But the important thing is here, yes, I am a bit of a certification junkie. And I think that's important to understand because there is so much to know in supply chain. And over the last 30 years, I've had to learn things in the supply chain. I've had to unlearn those things and relearn new things. So things are happening and they're changing in the supply chain all the time. So it's important that you get in and you start understanding these tools and how to use them. But let's start from the beginning. Where do all supply chains start? Well, all supply chains start with the earth, don't they? The earth provides. And if you think about it, everything we have today comes from the earth. We pick apples off the trees, we take fish out of the sea, we pump oil out of the ground, we get minerals out of the ground, and we produce all the lovely things that we use today. And unfortunately, a lot of that goes back into the earth as well afterwards. It gets dumped back in again. And I think we need to learn seriously how to reuse those materials that we don't need anymore. And I think the billionaires of tomorrow are going to be those people that can take our rubbish and turn it into something that we can reuse time and time again. So when you think about it, the supply chain is a global network, and it's a network that is what we call very VUCA. It's very volatile, it's uncertain, it's very complex, and it's ambiguous as well. And we need to understand that network because it doesn't matter who you are, you're going to be global. Even my little business, I'm global. I get materials from various places in the world. I even travel or have traveled, not in the last year and a half, but normally I will be traveling to various countries and providing services, consulting and education. So pretty well every one of us is global, and we need to understand that. But we also need to understand we have internal supply risks, supply chain risks as well within our own organizations. You know, people not coming to work or machines breaking down or we can't get materials. There's a whole host of things that can happen within our own organizations, which we need to understand and take account of as well. But there are lots of external risks as well, aren't there, that we can find out in our supply chains. And these can arise from situations between supply chain network and environments, international terrorism. We've had the recent COVID problems. We've had the trouble we've had in KwaZulu-Natal. We have natural disasters and these type of risks in our supply chains. We need to understand them. We need to try and mitigate them as well. So we have internal and external supply chains, and it all starts with the external supply chain. If we are a small manufacturing company, a small SMME, we will have some suppliers, some external suppliers providing us with materials possibly. Those will go through a process within our own organization, and then we need to get those products to our customers. And we don't necessarily deal directly with the customers. We could be dealing through distributors or wholesalers, and retail outlets even. So what I always say is, it doesn't matter who you are and whether you may have the best product in the world, if you don't have a lot of friends in the supply chain, you're not going to get your product to market. And remember, you might be manufacturing a plastic bottle, for example, for a bottle of water, and you make the bottles and you send it to the bottling plant. If you think about it, in reality, you haven't actually sold your bottle yet until some customer walks into a retail outlet and buys that bottle with the water in it. Then you've sold your bottle. Otherwise, you're just filling the supply chain up with bottles. You haven't really sold them. So having a lot of good friends in the supply chain is very important. And having good suppliers. I always say that your company is only as good as your suppliers. Make sure you deal with the best. Because if you're dealing with lousy suppliers, you're going to be a lousy company. If you're dealing with the best suppliers out there, you're going to be a good company. So I think that's pretty important. So successful supply chain implementation. Well, there are four key things here we need to look at. You need to have good internal staff. You need to have staff that is well educated in supply chain management. And this is where SAPICS comes in. All right, we have the tool, we have the educational programs to professionalize the people within your organization. I don't know, I've got so many companies, and some of them are quite large corporates. And I talk to people and they call themselves supply chain manager, but they've never been on a supply chain course. And they don't really understand how the supply chain works. So it's very important that you have well-educated, well-trained, and empowered people so they can go in and make a difference in your organization. We need to be able to schedule for success. Scheduling in an organization is absolutely critical, isn't it? Having the right materials and production capacity available when you need it, and being able to schedule accurately so you get good production plan adherence, which is going to give you good customer service. We also need to have good systems. We need to choose the right systems for our business as well. And we need to implement those systems correctly. That's pretty important. And as I mentioned, number 4 there, supplier participation. You're only as good as your suppliers. Make sure you're dealing with the best and not just going for the cheapest. Internet of Things. This is a term that's come recently, hasn't it? Internet of Things. If you think about it, there are billions of computer devices out there around the world that can all be linked together for collecting information and sharing data. It's absolutely incredible what we can do today, isn't it? Things like forecasting, we can gather data, asset tracking through the supply chain. Fleet management, knowing where your trucks are, knowing even if they've been hijacked or they've gone off the route or whether they've had an accident. So there are a lot of things that we can do today that we weren't able to do maybe a decade ago. And it's only going to get, well, maybe worse. It's going to get better. We're going to be able to use a lot of these things. And what we're looking at in our supply chains is that supply chain should actually be working on automatic. When you think about an aircraft, probably the pilot's only flying it about actually 5% of the time, you know, taking off, maybe landing and maybe maneuvering around a storm perhaps. But the rest of the time, the computer system is running that aircraft. We want to try and get to the point, and we're getting there today, where our supply chains are on automatic and we're only looking at those odd exceptions. So we're spending our time improving the way things work in the supply chain, letting the supply chain work on automatic, and then just coming in when we need to sort out a problem that may have arisen somewhere along the line. Customer service, absolutely incredible. And I find it amazing when I go to customers, go to my clients and I say, customer, what's your customer service? Oh, well, it's not too bad, or it could be better. Haven't you got a figure? You know, can't you tell me it's 95%? Why are you in business? Oh, we're in business to satisfy our customers. Well, why aren't you measuring it properly? So customer service is absolutely crucial, and it's absolutely key to your business as well. And we need to be continuously improving that. We need to be giving our customers better quality. Also, greater flexibility. Customers want flexibility as far as quantities are concerned, maybe even on the design of the products. They look for flexibility. We're also looking for shorter lead times. Customers might take their time to decide to buy your product, but once they've decided they want it now. They don't want to wait for it. And it's getting even crazy today, isn't it? That we can phone a supermarket or online go onto a supermarket and have our groceries delivered within an hour. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? We're also looking for lower costs, but I think maybe that's not the right term we should use there. We're not looking for lower costs. We're looking for better value, I think. So it's not necessarily about going for the cheapest. It's about going for the one that gives you the best value. And of course, number 6 there, reliability and availability of supply. Absolutely important that you must always have availability and be exceptionally reliable as well. So these are the sort of things that companies need to be focusing on. What about materials in the supply chain? Well, as I mentioned, everything comes from the earth. And I talk about the gatherers, the people who go and gather those basic raw materials. They then take those basic raw materials and they go through some primary processing, for example. So we take ore out of the ground and we've got to process it so that we can get the iron out of it, for example. We can then go into secondary processing where we might make steel bars, for example, and then into another manufacturing process where we make components. Those components could be then assembled at another company into a sub-assembly. That sub-assembly could then move on to be assembled into a final assembly, like a motor car, for example. And then we have a particular finished product that we can sell to our customers. So there is this supply chain of materials. As we move down the supply chain, those materials are changing form into a product that we can sell to our customer at the end of the day. This is one area that I find is lacking in a lot of companies, is policy. Okay, often I find procedures, yes, but don't often find policy. Now, policy is something that is written by top management. It is the way they want their business to run. For example, let's say we take a warehouse policy, for example, and the policy in the warehouse could be that to maintain accuracy in the warehouse, we're going to be using cycle counting processes and not monthly stock takes. That's the policy. It doesn't tell me how to do it, but that's the policy. Now, as the warehouse manager, I need to go and work out a procedure for doing a cycle count. And I believe there's also a third level of documentation as well, which is what I call the work instruction or the computer work instruction, because most procedures we need to access the computer system in some way. So I have a policy of doing cycle counting. I have to create a procedure as to how I'm going to do cycle counting in my warehouse, in my business. But then I need that computer work instruction to tell me, log on, go to this screen, do this, do that, print that report, etc. So that we have a complete set of documentation within our organization, which we can use to train our employees and to test them to a certain extent to see whether they understand the procedures and the work instructions, and we can class them as being competent in that area. So a lot of areas, there's a lot on the screen there, a lot of areas there that we need policy for, and I find that that is often lacking in a lot of companies. along with performance metrics or performance measurements. Quite often, I ask people, you know, how are you measured in your part of the organization? They can't tell me. And I think this is very important, because if we don't measure people, then we don't know whether they're doing a good job, but we must measure them in the right way. Now, if you haven't done so already, I would suggest you go onto your app store and you can find SAPICS Score. Okay, SAPICS Score, that's SCOR, score model. And you can download that free score model. It's a supply chain operations reference model. And in that model, it gives you the correct performance measures, KPIs that you need to put in place at certain points in the supply chain. So to me, that is a really brilliant a tool that you can use, because I find people either measure too many things or they measure the wrong things, okay? And you're not getting the results you want. So putting in the right performance measures and metrics within your organization, absolutely crucial. And of course, the SCORE model can help you do that. And the SCORE model also has many other functionalities or abilities inside it. And it's like, don't go and invent your supply chain. Use the SCORE model. It's all in the SCORE model there, in the SAPICS SCORE model. Absolutely brilliant. But make sure you've got the right measures and you're measuring the right things at the right point in the supply chain. When it comes to materials and inventory, inventory is very important in your business, isn't it? Inventory is your business if you think about it. Raw materials, work in process, finished products, distribution inventory. This is your business, okay? And you need to understand how to measure this properly. So there are some key measures here that indicate how well you are using your materials. And the first one there is inventory turnovers, inventory turns. How often does the inventory turn in your business? And it's a fairly easy calculation. We take the annual cost of goods sold and divide it by the average inventory, and it'll give us an indication of how often we turn over our inventory. So if you were turning over your inventory twice a year, that means materials coming into your business, you're processing it and then selling it to your customer about 6 months later. So you're hanging on to that material for about 6 months. This is not very good use of your materials. Okay, if we get to a turnover rate of about 12, that's quite nice, because you're turning your materials over every month. So you're getting raw materials coming in, you're manufacturing your products and selling them to your customers for a month, over a month. So that's pretty good turnover, but you can always get better than that as well. So further up the supply chain, manufacturing, we tend to talk about inventory turnover, but further down the supply chain, maybe down towards retail outlets, we tend to talk about inventory days of supply, all right? I have so much inventory, and how long is it going to last me before I run out? So how many days inventory have I got left before I run out? So that's another good measure. But obviously we want to try and keep as little as possible, but not too little that we run out on occasions. And then we've got inventory adjustments. Well, really that is inventory accuracy. And the only way to get high levels of inventory accuracy in your business is to use cycle counting processes. You won't get where you need to be doing monthly, quarterly, annual stock takes. It just isn't going to work. Put in proper cycle counting programs. And if you do it properly, you will be able to get to well above 99% accuracy in your inventory. And that is critically important in your business, because your business is inventory. You need to know exactly what you have and where it is in real time, just like your bank account. Now, inventory costs you money. You know, there is a cost of holding that inventory, but there's also a cost of not holding inventory. If we didn't hold inventory at all, we'd probably have to expedite everything in, fly it in, extra cost. So inventory is an asset as long as you have just enough at the right time. but it does cost us money to hold that. And in the course, you'll go through that. There's storage costs. Every square meter in your warehouse is costing you money. We've got the capital costs, the cost of actually spending money on inventory. All right. And we've got the risk cost. As soon as you have inventory sitting in a warehouse, you have risks. You have a risk that somebody's going to steal it from you. You've got a risk that it'll go past its sell-by date. You've got a risk that it could even become obsolete. Nobody wants it anymore. You could have a risk that there's a flood or a fire, for example, as well. So there's a huge amount of risk costs. So carrying inventory in your supply chain is expensive, and you need to understand what it costs. And we need to manage that inventory properly. And that's what we're going to be talking about in the next webinar next month. So when it comes to inventory management, very important, I'll mention it again, the procurement of those materials, very important. Okay, so deal with the best suppliers. Once we have those materials, we need to be able to plan the production properly, have a plan that the factory can stick to. We need to go through that manufacturing process, possibly then get into distribution. And depending on the products we sell, there might be some after-sales service required. And then, of course, there's that financial management of the costs of those materials as well. And then over on the right-hand side here, we can see there are security risks. And there's health and safety risks, and we need to efficiently use the space in our warehouses as well. And then, of course, there's quality control. So what about purchasing? What are the objectives of purchasing? So purchasing, as I mentioned, deal with the right suppliers, okay? We need to ensure product availability. We need to make sure that we will have the raw materials or the products that we're going to sell. They need to be available when they're required. We need to ensure the right quality of those products and the right quantities of those products as well. Implement governance, cash flow and profitability improvements. We need to be looking at that. We should be working with our suppliers and looking at ways to reduce lead times, to reduce costs in the supply chain. Because if you think about it, every dollar you save in the supply chain goes straight to the bottom line. So the procurement and purchasing department is very important in an organization, because whatever we can save in purchasing, and that doesn't mean to go out and buy cheap and nasty stuff, but whatever we can save in purchasing, it goes straight to the bottom line of profit. We need to develop suppliers. A lot of people complain, oh God, we can't find the right suppliers. Well, go out and develop them. And I think our car industry has done a fantastic job in South Africa. I mean, years ago, they used to build cars from knockdown kits. But today, many of the parts are being manufactured by suppliers in South Africa. The car industry has developed those suppliers, even to the point where we used to fly parts in. Now we're manufacturing parts here and flying them out to Europe. We need to implement supply standardization and manage contractual arrangements as well. So it's very important to have contracts with your key suppliers and those service level agreements as well. When it comes to distribution management, you may not do your own distribution. You may find a 3PL or a fourth party logistics provider to do that service for you. They might be doing warehousing for you. That's what we spoke about in the last webinar last month. There's materials handling, order processing, picking. These are all the processes that happen within a warehouse. So we need to be able to have good distribution management, good physical distribution to give better customer service and enhance the sales for your business, and always looking at decreasing costs as well. What about strategy, tactics, and operations? We need to be looking at our business in three areas, really. in a strategic way, we need to be looking at strategy, and probably we'll be looking out maybe 2 to 5 years. I think 10 years on the slide is a little bit long for many businesses, because there are so many things that happen in the world that are going to upset our strategy, that to try and strategize for 10 years is probably a little bit far. Unless, of course, you're an energy producer or a big chemical plant or an oil refinery, for example, you're going to have very, very long strategic long-term plans. But from strategy becomes tactics. This is the medium term now. And here we tend to look out maybe a cumulative lead time into the future. Could be maybe 12 months, maybe 18 months, the time it takes you to significantly change your capacity. And then, of course, we're looking at the short-term operational side of the business, where we're just looking maybe if over the next few days or the next few weeks. I wouldn't say operationally that many businesses would be looking at 12 months, maybe a month, maybe a couple of months, but I don't really see anybody looking at about 12 months as far as short-term operational aspects are concerned. Hazardous materials, very important to understand. Dangerous goods, they're going to include materials that are maybe radioactive, flammable, explosive, corrosive, oxidizing, biohazardous, toxic, pathogenic. There's a lot of hazardous materials out there. We need to understand those materials we're using in our business. We need to understand how to handle them, what PPE we need in handling them as well. And what happens if there's a spill? Do we have proper processes in place? I was at a company a few years ago, and a drum of printing ink fell off a lorry at receiving into the yard there, and the guys just took the hose and hosed it down the drain. And all that drain went out into a little sprite. The sprite went into the river, cost that company a fortune to clear up that mess, because nobody had told them how to handle these materials. So be very, very careful of materials, how we handle them, and how we handle spills and things like that. We need to train people properly in this area. Lead times. You know, we've been talking about reducing lead times for decades, and it's something we need to continually do. We need to reduce the time it takes to do anything, okay? And particularly in manufacturing, we need to look and make sure that we have included all the lead times, particularly in our routings. So it takes time to prepare an order. It may queue on a machine before it's set up and run. And then there's maybe an inspection time and a wait time and a move time to get it to the next operation, etc. So make sure you've got all elements in your lead time so you can do proper scheduling. Many years ago, I worked with a chemical company, and they mixed chemicals together, and they had to sit there and cure for 3 weeks before they could move on to the next operation. Well, somebody hadn't put that 3 weeks lead time into the routing. And people were telling me, MLP doesn't work, this product's always late. They were always 3 weeks late, but nobody had thought of going and having a look at the lead times in the system. So if things are always late, generally that's a red flag for you to go and look at your lead times. Make sure you have the correct lead times in your system. Warehousing we spoke about last time, but again, very important processes in the warehouse. Many warehouses all have very similar processes. They start by receiving the materials, making sure that they were ordered correctly and that they've got the correct material coming in, and then putting them away in the warehouse and understanding exactly where they are. Because at a warehouse, we need to know exactly what we have and where it is in real time. So storing those materials and replenishing those materials in the warehouse as well, storing them correctly so they don't deteriorate. I remember looking at an engineering store for a fishing company in Saldanha, and I walked in there. It's a stupid place to put the store, right on the quay. quayside, a very corrosive atmosphere with the salt water. And many things in that warehouse were corroded and absolutely useless. But if I looked in the system, it said I had one and it was a good one. But they didn't look after the materials properly and they were deteriorating rapidly. Then we're going to get an order and we need to go and select the order. We need to go and pick the materials correctly. And then we need to ship those materials to our customer as well. And by the way, just I'd like to change on this slide the word dispatching to shipping. Again, if you go into your smartphone app store and look for the SAPICS dictionary, I think one of the best things that SAPICS has done is created a dictionary which we can use globally. So when we talk to each other globally, we're using the right terms and the same terms and definitions. And if you look in the dictionary for the word dispatching, as we have on the slide here, it's not about shipping products to your customer. It's about issuing works orders onto the factory floor. So dispatching. And the word dispatching doesn't even feature in the SAPICS dictionary as well. The correct term really in this case is shipping. So download your SAPICS dictionary, very useful tool on your cell phone, as well as that SAPICS score model as well. What about perfect order measurement? Perfect order. What would you say is the perfect product? Well, I would say the perfect product is something that I can make instantly with no waste. Okay, not any of us have got really quite close to that, but just think about that in your business. How can I make the perfect product instantly with no waste? And I think with 3D printing, we're beginning to get there. But it's going to be a while, I think, but that's what we should be looking for. But we need to have what is a perfect order measurement. Did we give the customer what they wanted, when they wanted, in the correct quantities that they wanted, with the quality standards that were required? So the right product, the right packaging, the right documentation is very important as well. It's very annoying for the customer to get the wrong invoice or whatever, and then you've got to create a credit note, which costs money as well. So the right documentation is important. Delivering it to the right location as well, in the right quantity, quality, and most importantly, at the right time. So understand what is a perfect order in your business, and are you achieving that on a day-to-day basis? Okay, something else in business that I think a lot of companies don't do, and that is sales and operations planning. And this is where the demand side of the business comes together with the supply side of the business. And we make a game plan, okay? We have a game plan for the business. Now, a bit like on the football field, I guess the team has a game plan, and who knows that game plan? Not only the captain of the team, but every player on the team. Because if I go out onto the football field and I don't know what the game plan is, I'm probably going to kick the ball into the wrong net because they didn't tell me what the game plan was. All right, so it's the same in business. At this high level, top management creates this sales and operations game plan, which needs to be communicated to everybody in the organization. Okay, so we all know in what direction we should be pulling. And if we all pull in the same direction, then there's a very good chance that we're going to achieve our objectives. So sales and operations planning is generally a 5-step process where we look at a product review, we look at the demand review, which is the forecasts, we look at the supply review. Do we have enough supply to satisfy that particular demand? And then we might have a pre-sales and operations planning meeting where we put all this together, and then have a monthly executive sales and operations planning meeting, which confirms that game plan for the business, which then we use that to drive the supplier and the demand in our business. And part of that demand plan then is going to be forecasting. Now, forecasting is becoming more difficult. There's much more competition out there. There's a greater range of products that need to be forecasted. And so it's not getting any easier, it's getting more difficult. but we still need to have a reasonable idea of where our business is going into the future. And we need that because we may need to get more resources into the future. And there's a lead time to get those resources. And so we need to have what I call a reasonable consensus demand plan in our business. And that all starts with forecasting. So understanding forecasting and forecasting techniques and putting a demand plan process in your business, absolutely critical. What about continuous improvement? Absolutely important. Just love this stuff. I love lean, just in time, lean, Six Sigma. And these were the wastes that Ono came up with in the Toyota production plan. In fact, 7 of them, but we've added an 8th one in there. And the 8th one we've added, the one that Ono forgot about, was talent. And I think we underuse our talent. We tell people when they come to work, leave your brains in the car park, do what I tell you to do. Well, we have machines that can do what we do, and a darn sight better than we can do them. But at the moment, we don't have anything that replicates what our brain can do. And so we need to be using people for their brains, not for their hands, okay? So don't waste that talent you've got in your business. Give people opportunities to try new things, find new ways of doing things. They might fail, but that's fine. We learn by failing. And thank goodness Edison took 1,000 times to work on a light bulb, because otherwise we wouldn't have all this lovely stuff we have today. If he'd have given up after the first trial, we'd still be sitting in the dark ages today. Inventory, having the right inventory, the right sized inventory. Having too much inventory is a waste, okay? And we need to get rid of that. And most people have too much of the wrong stuff and not enough of the right stuff. We need to get right-sized inventory in our businesses. Motion, people are reaching and stretching and bending. This can be very tiring. So having people in the factory and a lot of motion like that can be very wasteful. Waiting, of course, we all hate waiting. And it's interesting, isn't it, that time is a great asset to us, and we all have the same asset. Whether we're a pauper or a billionaire, we all have the same 24 hours in the day. And we don't want to waste that, do we? We don't want to be waiting around, wasting that time. Transportation, every time we move something a meter, it costs us money. So let's try and reduce the amount of transportational movement that takes place. Defects, also a waste. If we make a bad one, we've used valuable raw materials to make something we're going to throw away. Best case scenario, we might be able to rectify it or rework it. But that also costs money as well. So all defects are waste. Overproduction. If we're told to make 10,000, then let's make 10,000, then make 14,000. Because what are we going to do with the extra 4,000? We may ultimately throw them away because the customer doesn't want them. So overproducing or producing too early is also a waste. And then over-processing, using the wrong processes to produce the product. I usually give the example of using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. It'll probably work. You might destroy the nut at the same time, but it's not exactly the right tool to use for that process, is it? So lean, absolutely lovely stuff. Love doing this, getting in there and finding better ways of reducing all these wastes in the system. One of the things we need to understand in our business is this manufacturing planning and control hierarchy. And this is traditionally how we've been planning our manufacturing businesses. And I like to have a dividing line down the left-hand side here, because on the left-hand side, I've got the demand side of the business, okay? And on the right-hand side here, I've got the supply side in my business. And if the supply side doesn't have a good demand plan, how on earth is it going to know what to make, how many, and when to make them? So the demand plan is very important. And as we mentioned earlier on, it starts really with statistical forecasting. So make sure you've got the right processes and the right tools in place to produce that demand plan. As we said, it comes together in the sales and operations planning process here. Here we have a business plan or a strategy in our business, which drives the sales and operations plan here. Now you'll notice that there are two columns here. This one here, which is priority or materials, and this one on the right-hand side here is capacity. So at each level, we do a sales and operations plan, and then we test that plan to see if we have sufficient resources to be able to do that plan. Because there's not much point in creating a plan and then passing it down the planning hierarchy if we're not going to be able to achieve that plan. So that capacity planning process is exceptionally important. So from the sales and operations plan in manufacturing, we have a production plan, which is in aggregate in product families, generally based around the plant and equipment that we use in our factories. The master production scheduler then takes that production plan in aggregate and disaggregates it down into end item SKU level items. And again, creates that master production schedule. So this is what we want to produce in these quantities, in these periods in the future. Now, again, I need to make sure that we have sufficient resources in our organization to be able to produce that plan. And so we do another capacity check here. It's called rough cut capacity planning. Once we understand that we have sufficient resources, we can then use this master production schedule to drive the materials requirements planning process. So MRP says, Mr. Master, Mr. or Mrs. Master Scheduler, if that's what you want in the warehouse in these quantities on those dates, this is what you better go and buy, how many and when to place the purchase orders. And this is when you better manufacture the parts that are required for the master production schedule. So we get the purchase orders and we get the manufacturing orders coming out of this process. So understanding this manufacturing planning and control hierarchy, very important to understand how it works within your manufacturing organization. Lastly, I want to talk about quality at source. We spoke a little bit about lean manufacturing, but quality at source is the responsibility placed on the people within your organization. Now, in a lot of organizations, we have production, and then at the end of the production line, there's a quality inspector. And when you go into those types of organizations, people say, no, just make the product. The guy on the end of the production line, it's his job to find the bad ones, okay? Well, he's probably not going to find all the bad ones, and some of them are going to get out to your customers. So it's very important that people understand that whatever they do, that it is quality at source. So if they make a bad one, throw it in the bin and make another one. Not only in the factory, it could be in the offices. If you've made a mistake on a document, for example, you know, make sure that it's correct before you pass it on, or you've put the wrong information in the computer system. Fix it up, quality at source. Everybody needs to understand that whatever they do has to be quality, all right, before they pass it on to the next person. If we do this, then there's no need for a quality inspector at the end of the production line because we have this quality at source. So it's the philosophy of making every worker responsible for his or her own work. So very briefly, I've been through some of the key points of what this course is going to give you. And if you go onto the SAPICS website and you go to the SMME page, education here, you're going to find more details about what's included in this particular course. And next time, that's Thursday, 9th of September, we're going to be talking about the inventory replenishment course and what's included in that particular course. So at this point, Tonya, do we have any questions?
We do have some questions here.
We do, okay.
what studies can I pursue to become a supply chain analyst?
Supply chain analyst. Okay. Well, we do have that supply chain CSCA, don't we? Certified Supply Chain Analyst course. It's a 2.5-day course. So there is that one. At a higher level, of course, we've got the CSCP, the APEX Certified Supply Chain Professional qualification, which is probably at a much higher level and takes quite a bit longer to get through as well. I don't know, does that answer the question, do you think?
So I think it depends on, Kenneth, you must just let us know if we've answered the question, but I think it depends on where you're coming from and what your fundamental skills base is in order for us to give you a better answer. So, I mean, definitely send us a note. Let's have a conversation and see how we can help you and put you on the right path.
Okay.
We've been asked if I missed the last session, can I catch up?
Yeah.
Yes, they're recorded, so you can. Do you have courses available for exporting from SA to the rest of the world, specifically regarding documentation requirements per country? Yeah. No, that would be SAF.
Yeah, I would agree with that, yeah.
So that's the South African Association of Freight Forwarders. They have a number of, I think, international qualifications related to that. So that's really their specific focal area.
Yeah. Tony, just to go back to the previous question, where can people go and find that recorded session from last time and the recorded session for this time once it's been finished?
I stand to be corrected, but I think that we send out a follow-up email that includes a link to the YouTube video. Alternatively, if you just go to YouTube and you find SAPICS, you will find it's under the SMME page. Sorry.
Is that your security guard?
You know what? She's just so small, and so I apologize. Yeah, so I see Claire's taken her mute off. Am I right, Claire?
Yes, that's right. I'm just quickly trying to find the YouTube. Oh, Jenny's found it. Oh, she's so good. I was about to find the YouTube link from the last session and put it on here, but Jenny's done that. And the YouTube session and the for today, and so therefore the slides will be sent to you in the next couple of days.
Okay, good. Anything else, Tonya?
I'm now throwing stationery to try and keep it. I apologize. Okay, hopefully it's going to be quiet now. I just want to see if there's new messages coming through here. Okay, so I think that, and I just want to put it out there. So you don't have to put up your hands, but nobody's judging anybody here because this is an SMME group, and I would like to see by a show of hands how many of you felt like that was underwater Hebrew, that it was sounded like some foreign language that you had never heard of before. Because I think that in the majority of SMME businesses, supply chain management is an alien concept. And I know that many years ago I did the basics of supply chain management course, and that's what it felt like to me. So if it sounds overwhelming and it sounds like it's an awful lot of information, it's not as bad as you think it is. It takes time to familiarize yourselves with some of the terminology, but if it is new to you, I would encourage you to learn more, especially if you have an SMME business. These things that we're talking about here can make a big difference to your organization's bottom line. Just talking about the inventory aspects, you know, letting the inventory get damaged and things like that, that costs money in the long run. You know, there are so many ways that you can add value to your business through doing these types of courses and learning so much more. So have a look at it, learn a little bit more. You know, if you want to have a one-on-one discussion, happy to do that. If you are a little bit more familiar and okay with supply chain management, then we've got the SAPICS conference coming up from the 24th to the 26th of August, and there will be a fantastic array of speakers on a variety of topics end-to-end supply chain. So I would encourage you to attend that. That will be a real a feast of content, as we like to say. But yes, we are here to support you. SAPICS is very, I'm going to say focused, but determined to support the SMME community. We recognize that through supply chain initiatives and courses like this, we can help you, and it will make a difference for your business. And we know that SMMEs are the backbone to our economy, and you are the change that we hope to see in the economy and job creation. So we want to be here to support you in any way that we can. So you know where to find us. Get to our website, all the contact details are there. If you have questions, please just send an email to anybody that's there. It will get to somebody at the office, and we'll do what we can to help you out. So I hope that this was valuable to you and you enjoyed the session. So next month we have the next one. We're going to learn lots more. Thank you for your time and your interest in SAPICS by attending this event. And we shall look forward to seeing you all at the next event, I hope. So thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I'm an SMME, and without SAPICS, I wouldn't be where I am today. I've been a member for 33 years. This is my 33rd conference, by the way, and I've been to every one. I've never missed one. Okay, so once you start going to these conferences, you won't want to miss out every year. And I tell you, without SAPICS, I would not be where I am today. So join SAPICS, get involved, become certified, and progress and grow. So good luck to everybody out there.
Absolutely, and that's what we're here for. And I did see that Jenny took her mic off for a minute there, or was I seeing things? No, maybe I was seeing things. Oh,
sorry, I just had to take a quick call. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Keep well, everybody.
Bye.
And
thank you, everybody.
Please,
and we'll see you
if you've
all
got
soon.
any questions, come and ask us. All right. Bye.
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 Cheers, Bill.